Yeah.
Hello, everybody. It's a little after 8 o'clock, and guess what today is? It's time for Black Pro Gen Live. We are here with some amazing people tonight to talk about the best of libraries for people of color in genealogy research. We hope to provide you with some great resources that you can use for your genealogy searches. And what I'll do right now, panelists, please feel free to mute yourselves so that there is no feedback, and make sure that you're not watching the YouTube live version of this program. So before we get started, just want to do a little housekeeping. If you are interested in joining the conversation right now while we're doing this broadcast, feel free to tweet us at Black Pro Gen Live on Twitter. And then you can also make comments about some of the things that we're talking about by using the hashtag BlackProGenLive. And we just want to give a shout out to those of you who are in the public chat room as we're doing the Hangout tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Definitely want to do a quick welcome to everybody that's here in the introduction. So let me turn my camera on. Hello, panel. Let's get started. I'm Nika Smith. I'm here in sunny, actually not sunny, Memphis, Tennessee. Let's get started. We'll go with Toni since she's the one that's unmuted right now.
All right. Hi, Gen friends. I'm Toni Carrier. I'm at home in Tampa right now, having run from the hurricane in Charleston. My family has roots in, my family's Cajun, and with roots in Louisiana and Mississippi. But my website, Low Country Africana, does African American research in South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida.
All right. Next up is Shelly Murphy.
Hello from Central Virginia, just outside of Charlottesville. And I am here hailing for Maggie, Midwest African American Genealogy Institute.
All right. Next up, we'll do the only man in the house. What's going on, Y chromosome? James Morgan III.
Every month you have a new Y chromosome joke. I'm going to get you one day. Hello, everybody. My name is James Morgan III. I currently reside in the great state of Maryland, right outside of our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., originally from New Jersey. And as always, I am thrilled to be here.
All right. Next up, Abarikwa. You don't know which one.
Don't know.
I'm going to say we don't know which one. Let's go with the one in the north first. Teresa Vega.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Teresa Vega representing, especially Northeast United States. Now you can go with the other one, my cousin.
And the other Boricua down there in Florida. We've got two people in Florida now. Do you guys realize that?
Yes, down in the southeast.
Yeah, down in the
Fernandez Sacco, and I'm in Tampa, Florida. I'm glad to be here.
Good, good. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. So we've got a full set of subjects to discuss tonight. But before we get to that, we're going to get to the most fun part of our show. The part that everybody loves, that makes us so unique. We got to have our top 10, right? So again, this week, Shelly Murphy has allowed us the ability to join in and enjoy her lovely list of top 10 things that she comes up with. Don't ask me how she does this, because every time we do this, I always think that I'm gonna create a great top 10, and I never do. And Shelly always has something awesome. So this is all kudos to Shelly. So
and Angela.
And Angela, yes, and Angela Walton Raji. So this week we're going to talk about 10 reasons why you are still joining us here on Black Pro Gen Live. Number 1.
10.
Oh, sorry, 10. Duh, I forgot. All right, hold on. I don't know why this isn't appearing. All right, here we go. You heard that True Lewis was giving away a DNA kit. And unfortunately, I don't know how she's going to do this because the poor thing, she's been having technical difficulties the whole time, and she keeps bouncing in like a ball trying to get in on this call. So you might definitely want to email her. Number 9 is you keep asking who Bernice Walton Raji is. Ask me who she is because I would know. Number 8, it is boo time or it's boo time. Tell us which ancestor you will dress up as for Halloween in the chat room or on Twitter at BlackProGen. So just a quick sampling of our panel. Who would you dress up like as for Halloween in a couple weeks if you had to pick an ancestor?
I dress up as my grandfather.
Why?
Because I'm named after him. He's James Morgan Sr. Duh.
That was vindication for the Y chromosome joke. Already,
Yes.
there was a little bit too.
Yes.
There was a little bit too much bass in his voice for that not to be vindication.
Oh yeah.
Even.
Whatever. Anybody else? Who else are you going to dress up as for Halloween? Come on.
I got one.
All right.
That ancestor right behind me. See her glowing?
I thought that was your halo.
No, that's an that's an angel. That's my great grandmother.
And why?
Mary Catherine Goins, born in 1840, died 1905.
Any particular reason?
Because she's always there with me.
All right, guide you on down the road. Anybody else before we move to the next thing?
I would pick my third great uncle Jacob D. King, only because he built an underground railroad and I want to be a hero. 1830.
All right. I want Miss Angela to dress up like my girl in the corner.
Which one?
Sally.
Sally.
Oh,
That is.
okay. I'll take that. I knew.
Wait a
Sally,
minute.
So, yeah.
I was thinking of Uncle Cephas was about
Well,
to
that's
go.
the man. You know that. I'll come with guns blazing with his musket.
I got it.
Oh my God. Our slight deviation, but back to the top 10 again. All right. You just evaluated Oprah's DNA and it's confirmed she is related to Moses.
I believe that.
You believe that. You believe that. All right. Number 6, you thought we were giving out tickets to the new Smithsonian Museum.
One.
That actually is a good one. My sister actually just went for the first time and she's just ranting and raving about how amazing it is and how much she absolutely 110% loves it. So I could be holding some tickets for ransom right now, but I'm not. All right. Number 5, you heard Shelley say, Houston, we have a problem after reading Nika's recent article and wanted to find out more. Yeah, more. You are still waiting to hear your name called for the Maggie Scholarship. It sounds like we might have one. I'm not sure. We may or may not have one. We'll see. We'll see. Number 3, you needed a reason to forget all about Sunday's presidential debate. Yes. Yeah, I'm all for that. All right. Number 2, you thought Black Pro Gen was an NBA team with an archivist as its mascot.
Hey.
Although, they really could do that for the Washington Nationals. They could make a person an archivist, but, I guess that's not, as getting records in record time is not considered it's not considered sportsman-like, I guess. Anywho, in number 1, because Shelley and Nika are too loud to be in the library. I 110% agree with that sentiment, especially.
We're related. We have to be related because we are loud. My son came up with that one.
Oh my gosh. Well, he was pretty spot on. I can't say he was out of pocket with that. So, yeah. All right, moving forward, we've done our top 10. Now let's get to our subject matter. We have one other person that's joined us. And Angela has to give her greetings and salutations from the great state of Maryland.
Hey, that's it. right on the Chesapeake.
Renata.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And don't forget, if you are in our chat room, feel free to make some comments. I see a few people in there from Facebook. I see Katrina, I see Bernice Walton Raji, aka Bernice Bennett. There are a few.
Chat room. I'm trying to see it.
Well, I will provide the link again in our chat area because you can't necessarily get to it immediately. So let's talk libraries. Why in the world would we still use them? In this digital age, in this everything is digitized online age, right? Why would we still be using libraries? Like, what's the point?
Well, I can think of a ton of reasons. First of all, I think libraries are, when you think of the word repository, I mean, that's exactly what it is. It's a repository of a certain level of knowledge about a particular place, particular schools or what have you, particular collections. And one of the biggest resources, aside from just the books and papers that are there, really are the archivists and the librarians that work so hard organizing that stuff. I mean, they accumulate so much knowledge of just to know where to get stuff over the years working there, that, I mean, they're an invaluable resource. Yeah.
All right, anyone else want to weigh in? Why libraries?
Well, not everything is, and there are only resources that you can find in certain places. You know, and that's one of the biggest things. Libraries and archives offer unique documents, and you have to be willing to go there. So it's going to be a while before they digitize everything. So one of the reasons why.
Anyone
I
else
like
want to
it
weigh
being
in?
in one place, and I can maneuver all over, but I go to one location, and everything is at my disposal. And my favorite, and we'll talk about it in a minute, but just love to go there and be there. I love being surrounded by the energy that comes with the books, and just love it, love it, love it, love it.
Also, we have to remember that everything is not online. In
That's
fact, most things are not online.
Correct.
And so libraries, of course, are fabulous places, especially to get a handle on the local history. If it is a county library or city library, you may get some publications that you will not find any other place. And these publications reflecting the local history have not been digitized. And so you're not going to find them on Ancestry or Family Search or the Internet Archive. Sometimes they are literally just right there on the shelves. Secondly, it's a wonderful repository for if you get a chance to use those vertical files. A lot of people just contribute all kinds of wonderful things that end up in the vertical files of libraries. And this is where you find those gems. And so we need libraries, and librarians are our best friends.
Anyone else want to weigh in?
I'm surprised by how many people don't think of going to libraries when they do their research or doing genealogy. It's almost like they expect everything to be on Ancestry at times, or some other digital provider, and they actually get overwhelmed sometimes initially, and then you realize that it's really organized, and you can always call people, just the way that James had mentioned in terms of trying to get insights into where do I go to be directed to particular resources. And there's so many great places. And we'll be talking a lot about those tonight. Yeah.
Anyone just like the smell?
Yes.
Yeah, the books, that energy.
Yeah.
As an allergy sufferer,
I'm with you, James.
yeah, I mean, I love the smell, but I hate the after effect.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's more in that case, it's more the dust and not so much the books, but the pages, like books have the pages have a certain smell. For me, I'm a tactile person. I like to touch, You know, I like to touch and feel, like when I go shopping for clothes, like I feel the fabric. What does it feel like? You know, and for me, that's one of the big reasons why I've never gotten into e-readers, is because I like to hold a book in my hand and feel the pages and turn them down instead of use a bookmark. Even though I have 100 bookmarks, I still got to dog ear my page. So I'm a creature of habit, but I like being in, you know, just the whole ambiance is amazing.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn it down.
Okay, hold on just a second. Felicia, we're gonna need you to mute yourself. I hear you over there talking to Kim.
Hi, Felicia.
There's Felicia Addison joining us from sunny California. Just to let the chat room weigh in. People say they love the librarians. Absolutely love the librarians. I have to agree. I have a cousin that's a librarian, and she's an amazing person. So I think librarians are pretty stinking awesome. Also, it's a place to focus. I think that is a good point as well. Sometimes when we're sitting at home, you know, even if we're doing research in the late, you know, hours of the evening, we are, you know, we can get distracted by this, right? This is going off with alerts, and, you know, you've got, you know, your kid crying in the background because they don't want to go to sleep and it's 8:18, you know, hypothetically speaking, right? Or, you know, you just get to zone out, especially if you're in a genealogy library, a library that's dedicated to genealogy. You can just tune out so much being there and focusing your time. So I definitely agree with that.
One thing I'd like to add to that is that I love specialty libraries. Like I do that a lot. Like obviously Masonic library is what I specialize in. But also, like, I've been going to a lot of theological libraries, researching ancestors that were ministers. And, you know, it's really interesting. One thing I noticed last time I went to one was how people who were researching different denominations seemed to, like, crowd around different areas. And even though you're supposed to be quiet in the library, it was kind of like a social thing, too, with other researchers. Like, hey, what are you looking at? What are you looking at? What's that book? You know? So I think that's also an important aspect as well, that you don't get at home.
I was just about to mention that I kind of miss how libraries used to be quiet, because I'm a quieter type, and they're not quiet anymore. And it's still, it doesn't really distract me so much, other than the fact that I'm just kind of amazed by it, that people are so loud and conversations are going on across the room in the libraries these days. So that's just a change that has taken place. I have to get used to.
What can you attribute that to?
I haven't seen it, so I haven't experienced that.
I noticed it occasionally in Baltimore City. I don't see it as much as maybe in some of the neighborhood libraries, but the large library downtown Baltimore can be very noisy. And I think that is because there's a change in the culture. Exactly. Well, there are two factors. Number one, you have kids now showing up in groups doing homework, and they're not doing their homework quietly and alone. They're talking to each other. They're almost bringing sadly, there's classroom culture with them. And we know classrooms sometimes are not quiet places when perhaps a reduction in noise might be desired. I remember the first time when I first moved here in the 1990s, and I went to the Maryland room to do some research, and I couldn't believe how noisy there were. These are kids, and when I'm saying kids, I'm meaning middle schoolers, and you know, they're kind of crazy at that age. But the librarian, I think, was a little afraid of them, to tell them to be quiet, to enforce quiet. And so now it's changed in a dramatic way, and that's unfortunate. And I think that whole sort of, okay, let's get together and do our homework. Hey, stop kicking me. Oh, you know, you like him. You know, that sort of adolescent behavior is there now, and that's unfortunate. And I had a second reason, but it's escaped me. So anyway.
Yeah. In my experience, it's not kids. I mean, the kids are part of it. I see what Angela sees also, but it's the adults, it's the people that work in the libraries. You know, they're not beginning or expecting a culture of quiet anymore. It's just a totally different vibe, and I'm the only one that seems to really think things should be quiet in the ones that I go to, which are mostly the public libraries here in Hampton and Newport News, as well as the North Carolina State Library and Archives, which are in the same building. I especially notice it there. It's the librarians, it's the archivists, it's, they're helping other people in many cases, but they're just not quiet about it at all. There's no attempt to be quiet at all.
Do you think, before we get to actually covering the libraries, do you all think that this might be a result of the fact that we have less personal interaction with people on a daily basis? And that might be the only place that people actually are sitting next to another person and engaging them in a conversation, because it's a little bit more awkward if you're doing that at a restaurant where like you're at a table with your friends. Like you typically won't turn around and have a conversation with another person if you're there with a group, or even if you're there by yourself. But if you're in this space where everybody's there to either learn, obtain something, make a copy of something, like you're there for, I guess you would say, like maybe a purpose.
In our libraries here, just talking about local libraries right now, we have a lot of programming. So there could be a group playing music in the library. There could be people doing skits in the library, or, having a talk of some kind in the library. And that brings all different kinds of people in. And like I said, there's just no culture of once you come through the library doors, you kind of bring it down a little bit. That's just not there anymore. But maybe it's just a local thing, because I hear some people saying that they haven't experienced it at all. So I'm not sure.
Well, I would say,
go ahead, James.
I would say I think one of the factors is that you have to realize that a lot of people feel as though they can just go on the internet, not just for genealogy, but just for everything. Everything's on the internet. Everything's online. And so what I think has happened is that libraries have found that they have to be more lax with some things, probably because they're trying to attract people to justify them getting the funding so they can keep their jobs. I remember when we were at IBGS back in September, one of the archivists from the National Archives had mentioned that I guess they had changed the hours or something like that, I think at one of the locations, and somebody had a problem with it. And the lady said, well, the reason we changed it was because nobody except for, the same 5 or 10 people were coming in during these late hours that we were keeping. So we had to cut, for budget constraints, So I think that's one of the reasons too, is that I see somebody in the chat room talking about vending machines and things, they're trying to stay relevant in a world that's going online now, which is really a sad paradigm shift, but it just kind of is what it is. But I look at it this way, the less people in the library, the quicker I get my stuff.
Well, what the other thing I just thought about as well too is, and I posted this in the public chat room, is it the Starbucks and or Barnes and Noble effect? When that has almost in some ways superseded the library at some point, because people will go there and work and read the books and sort of rent the books, you know what I mean? So they don't have to pay for them. Put them right back on the shelf, or just sit there and just exist. There could be a number of different reasons why, but let's move into content. So let's talk best of libraries. I'm going to go ahead and kick this off with my favorite. I call it the genealogist version of Las Vegas. It's our casino here on Earth, because when you walk in there, you don't look at it, you don't notice the clocks, you don't notice the windows, because you were just. And I'm talking about Salt Lake. Notice how calm and just spa-like effect just went over everybody's face. We're all glistening and have day glow. We're using Snapchat filters because we're thinking about Salt Lake City. I'm talking about the Family Search Library there in Salt Lake City. Who all out of our panel has been to Salt Lake? Just raise your hands.
Almost passed out.
Yeah. It's just, I can't believe you haven't been there, Felicia. Oh gosh. Okay. Wow. Salt Lake is, as a researcher, it's like, you just gotta go, there's nothing
Mecca.
else. It's like Mecca. It's like, you gotta take your pilgrimage. And it definitely is one of those things where it's like, you know, it's what Miss Shelley talked about, where it's just everything's here. It's in one place. You know, I call it, you know, my ultimate research trip, because I can go to several counties in several states and I'm not leaving the same building when it comes to microfilm and records and books. And I mean, it's just floors and floors and floors of different things. And anybody who's been there, what's your favorite part of the Family Search Library in reference to people of color?
For me, I have almost one row. In fact, I have a tiny dot that I have made in pencil on the edge, you know, the sliding cabinets, that I have a little dot so I know, and it's still there. Shh, somebody's going to go and erase the dot tomorrow. But anyway, I have a tiny dot so I know what row I want to go. I always go through the same drawer. There are a set of records that reflect freedmen schools in Indian Territory, specifically Scullyville, Sugarloaf, Sandboys, Kamish, all these little communities where there were Black schools with school rosters. And these are records I've been looking at off and on for years, including one elusive school, Tuscaloosa. It sounds like Tuscaloosa, which is the Choctaw word for Black warrior, which was the name of a private boarding academy. And I've been studying the records from multiple schools from Indian Territory that they have. I can't find these in Oklahoma, and I find them in Salt Lake, and I am just in research heaven when I am there.
Uh-oh, we lost her audio.
We lost you.
We lost your audio. And she was about to make a really good point,
Well,
because her hand was going.
I sat next to her, and I believe the document she found, and let me know, Angela, if I'm telling it correctly, because she is correct. When you found Uncle Cephas's owner or something, or found him on a log, we were at the Family History Center. I think we were IBGS, and she had found that document, and I was sitting next to her. And I wasn't having as much luck at the moment, but I didn't know how to move. Wow. I had to stay there, went in at 8:30 in the morning, y'all, and they basically had to put me out. I almost passed out, went to the corner, got some food, came right back to my seat and stayed in there. You know, it just got so much. Yes. But anyway, the Uncle Cephas, he's coming back up again.
Yes.
And but you found that document when we were sitting next to each other.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you now.
What she's referring to was an estate inventory. So this was me taking a break from Indian Territory, and I start looking at some records, and I see an estate record, estate inventory from 1860 for Major John Bass, who owned a number of slaves in Giles County, Tennessee. And there was Uncle Cephas and his brother, my great-grandfather, Mitchell. And there they were on that inventory. And I was just like, oh my God. So, yeah. So I forgot you were there, Shelley.
Sitting right next to you.
I was probably too busy talking to myself going, oh my God.
Well, that's one of the things that I love, especially when you go as a part of a conference, is when you're like in there and you know everybody's in there with you. You know, like, I mean, you know, especially as people of color, I mean, because I've been to Salt Lake when there wasn't a conference of, you know, people of color there. And then I've been there when there has been a conference. And so you're like walking through the microfilm machines, and it's almost like everybody's hearing the same music. Like we're all hearing, I don't know, like people all over the world, join hands, right? You're like, hey. You know, you know, we're like high-fiving people. And then you hear folks just jump up and everybody turns around and you look and you're like, they must have found something. And somebody's like, I found my so-and-so. And they're trying to say it all quiet because they don't want to disrupt everybody else. That's one of the things I love about that, is just the rolls and rolls of microfilm and people making these discoveries that they've been waiting years to find. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I will give it to the people at the Family History Center. In 2006, I think that was the first time the OGS conference went. That was my first trip to Salt Lake City. And I had to give it to them. They were more than hospitable. They knew the conference was coming. And I remember I was going down in that room on the second floor looking for something. And, you know, you just cast your eye aside. And I noticed an abandoned computer that had a screensaver. And I kind of looked up, I was like, Harriet Tubman, this is Utah. And then I noticed several computers, the screensavers, they had Frederick Douglass, they had Sojourner Truth. I went, oh my goodness, they knew we were in town. And I'm thinking, this is Utah, oh my. But they were more than welcoming. And of course, I had to leave the last day. I did miss an amazing experience because that Sunday I had a flight, but I did miss the experience of hearing full chorus, full orchestra of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir giving a concert for us singing spirituals. And so they were very, very accommodating. That was an amazing experience. But the experience of just the research itself and being there with records that I can't touch those records here. I can't. I might spend years trying to get to the right set of records or try to get to Pulaski Courthouse in Giles County, Tennessee, to have found it after immersing myself in Oklahoma and Indian Territory, go to another cabinet, and there's Uncle Cephas, there's Grandpa Mitchell. And I'm thinking, oh my God, that made it worthwhile. I was ready to pack up and go home satisfied. It was a good experience. And that is an amazing place.
One thing I'll also add before we move on to the next set of libraries is do your homework before you get there.
Correct.
Make sure that the rolls of microfilm that you want to look at are actually on site and not in the vault, because there's a whole separate other process that you have to do to request those. They won't be available right when you get there. Also, print out. I print out all the guides with the microfilm rolls on there, so I can actually tick off which ones that I actually looked at when I was there or that I rented. So I'm not going back over 50 times the same roll of microfilm. Make sure that it's open when you're going, right? Because sometimes people forget to check the operating hours. It's not open on Sunday. We wish it was, but it's not. And just other policies. And this goes as well for other libraries as well. You want to make sure you're kind of following, their guide. You're not kind of following, but you are following their guidelines with regard to, what you can wear, what you can bring in, all that sort of stuff. Check out their website and make sure that you're all together with that. So when you get there, there's no surprises. So after Salt Lake, after Mecca, what are some other suggestions? And I will, of course, remind us of what we put in our repository of our favorites before discussion is over.
Well,
I don't think I sent any.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't think I sent anything in, but I always have to plug for North Carolina. So there's going to be, of course, the North Carolina State Library and Archives, which is in Raleigh, 103 East Jones Street. Know that one by heart. And then the Wilson Library at UNC Chapel Hill, which has just an amazing collection of all different kinds of documents, family papers, family collections, and a photographic collection. And the Rubenstein Library at Duke University. I always like to plug those in. I'm sure somebody else will talk about the Library of Virginia. Even though I live in Virginia, I don't research in Virginia, so I'll leave that for somebody else. And just to, as everybody has said, don't forget the local county libraries. I have found in all my counties in North Carolina, there are family histories that have been donated personally, and they're not going to be anywhere else but in that local library. So that's something to not forget. Awesome. That's it.
I guess I'll go next. One of my favorite places to research is actually my alma mater, Howard University's Moreland Spingarn Research Center. It's one of the largest repositories for materials relating to people of African descent in the entire country. I believe it's second behind the Schomburg up in New York, which is also a great place to go. But I love that place. I have an emotional tie to that place, obviously, because I went to school there. And then I have to obviously plug for the library that I help to manage, which is the John Ellington Masonic Library, which is located here in Washington, D.C. It's when I've said that term before, Masonic Library. It's very common within within the fraternity I belong to, that we actually have libraries throughout the country that hold our official records. And the Ellington Library is the one that we have here. Not a lot of people necessarily know about them or use them. And again, I look at it this way: the less people, the quicker I get to get to my stuff. But I encourage people to check those out if you're ever researching your family members. Even if they weren't members of the fraternity, you never know what we have in our collections too. So I always will plug that also.
How would Howard University's library differ from, what would make that particular library different than perhaps maybe some other university? Just for folks that are watching, because they don't know that.
No problem. I would say what makes Moreland Spring Garden so unique in my opinion is that it is really, they really have gone out and collected a lot of family papers, book collections, etc., on people of African descent. I mean, Howard University is definitely the premier. I don't care what nobody else says. We're the premier HBCU in the country, and I think that over the years, when you get into the history of the center itself, they understood that they had a mission to establish a place that people could come and learn about the African American experience. Really, before it really became cool to do that. So that's what I would say would make it unique. There are a lot of great collections on your fraternities and sororities with their memberships and whatnot. The AME Church, you have actual families that do donate, and even if they're not in any way affiliated with Howard University or with Washington, D.C. at all. A lot of people just give their stuff to Howard because they know that it's a place where you had some of the top Black archivists educated and trained right there. So, that's what I would say will make it really unique. They really got a jump. I mean, now we have the new Smithsonian Museum here in the city, which is great, but that's like the new kid on the block. Howard was there on this, going back, I think we're at like 100, almost 170 years now. So, W.B. Du Bois papers right there, so you just have a unique collection that I think is, in my opinion, it is only comparable to the Schomburg Center. That is my personal opinion.
Okay, well, I just want you to know that people in the chat room are questioning the idea that Howard is the premier HBCU, and you already knew you were going to start a fight with this.
We might lose a couple viewers tonight, but I'm gonna just say too bad.
Well, I gotta represent for the Gremlinites that are in the chat room, because I know they're there, and the Southernites that are in the chat room because they're there, and the Tuskegeans that are there, and the TSUans that are there as well.
My great granddaddy, who's 97, I just talked to him today. He's a Tuskegee. He went to Tuskegee, so I'll let that one slide. The other ones, I don't know about those.
Just to go in the chat room, just to kind of fill them in on what's going on. They're bringing up some wonderful suggestions. Of course, Allen County Public Library, that goes without saying, especially considering that that's been the home of the Midwest African American Genealogical Institute this year and next year. The wonderful Kurt Wichter, who is amazing resource there. They've got so much stuff. I would think it would probably be kind of like after Mecca, Salt Lake, you've got the Allen County Public Library in terms of resources and things that are made available to the public. The New Orleans Public Library, yes, Nutrius. If you don't know about Nutrius, you better get some Nutrius in your life. You're like, what is Nutrius? That's Nutrius, NUTRIAS.org is the website for the New Orleans Public Library System. And I use that quite often. If you are doing research in Louisiana, it doesn't matter if it's in New Orleans or not, check out the resources at the New Orleans Public Library. They often have records for the entire state. And they have a whole genealogy area in the downtown branch. Other libraries that people are bringing up, Library of Virginia, which was discussed. We'll actually, of course, be spending quite a bit of time on that during the next hangout, which is about genealogy research in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. The DAR Library, or Daughters of the American Revolution Library in DC, an amazing resource. Shout out to True Lewis, she's not here, who's getting inducted this week in the Daughters of the American Revolution.
Yay.
Yes, although she can't join us, but she's here in spirit. She's tweeting and other things. Let's see, Ouachita Parish Library in Monroe, Louisiana. Yes, if you've got North Louisiana roots or southeastern Arkansas, northwestern Mississippi, check out that library because it's the Delta. Yeah, and Western Arkansas. It's got amazing stuff. Schaumburg, people have talked about New York Public Library. If you didn't know, they put a whole bunch of city directories online last week. Scanned. Get your life. Get you a directory. All right. New York Historical Society, New Jersey Historical Society. Anything else? I'm going to go back to our running list, but anybody else want to throw your shout out in for your spot right now? This is the time to do it.
Arkansas History Commission, Little Rock, Arkansas, and Oklahoma
Library of
Historical Society Archives, Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to say something about this just came to my mind. It was years ago that I visited the Presbyterian Historical Society up in Philadelphia. I was looking for some specific information on my ancestors' Presbyterian church. Didn't get what I was looking for, but I was amazed by this library and the amount of documents that they had. So I'm assuming there must be such a thing for all church organizations, but Historical Society Library in Philadelphia was amazing. And then I also have spent time in the New York Public Library system and was going to throw that out there too. Just they have a plethora of information too.
All right. Anyone else care to add anything before I start going down our list? The chat room has Enoch Pratt Library in Baltimore, yes. Dallas Public Library, amazing resources for people of color. And that's what we want to make sure you know. We're talking about researching people of color in these particular libraries, because I've gone, and I know the panelists have gone to libraries where we expect to find information on our ancestors as people of color, and we don't come back with much. So these are places that we've gone and we've we've experienced amazing discoveries. One of the things I'll add, let's see, looks like Centro Archives at Hunter College. That's something that was thrown in by Ellen Fernandez Sacco. What do they have at the at Hunter College with regard to the Central Archives?
There's a larger collection of documents that were actually thrown out, that were rescued, that had to deal with the work permit cards that people had to be issued when you came up from the island and you came to New York. You couldn't just get a job. You had to get an identification card to show that you were a migrant, and the photographs, thumbprints, brief biographical information there at Centro. They have other people in the Puerto Rican communities, their personal papers. And then at NARA New York City also has a collection of documents, and there's a whole PDF that's online for their collection at NARA for that also deals with issues around Puerto Rican migration to New York and Puerto Rican history. Yeah.
All right. Anything else we're going to throw in there before we get to the next topic? We're jamming people up right now.
I could sort of piggyback on to what Renata said earlier about Duke and UNC special collections. Pretty much, if your research involves the southeastern seaboard, there's basically 4 archives where you're probably going to spend the most of your time researching. South Carolina Historical Society, of course. Plantation records from the Low Country. Some of the largest slaveholders in the country were in the Low Country. The South Caroliniana Library at the University of South Carolina in Columbia, South Carolina. And then, of course, Duke and UNC Special Collections. Well, South Carolina Historical Society has become a bit richer because they have recently combined their facility with College of Charleston Special Collections. And if your research involves Charleston particularly, both of those archives would be on your radar. So that's fabulous. But would also just like to throw out very quickly archivegrid.org, which is a search engine for finding archival collections in the United States. That's archivegrid.org. It's a wonderful tool.
You said archivegrid.org?
Yes, archivegrid.org.
Okay. All right, putting that in the chat room. Game recognized game. Thank you, Miss Tony. I'll throw in the Amistad Research Center in New Orleans. Amazing and incredible I already know the next time I go to NOLA, I'm just basically going to get a sleeping bag and just sleep in there because there's just so much. One of the things that I think is amazing that they have there are Kim Lacey Rogers went and interviewed the people who were part of the New Orleans chapter of the Congress of Racial Equality, which oftentimes gets overlooked because of Nashville and perhaps New York, but they were definitely, out of those three, they were definitely one of the most active chapters in the country. And she's got audio interviews from just about everybody that was a part of that chapter and did them sometimes nearly 40 years ago. And the original tapes are actually housed at Amistad. And so I cannot wait to actually go and listen to that. Any more we can throw in before time gets going? I'm going to check the chat to see if anybody else brought anything up. I'm seeing Charleston Public Library, Wiregrass Archives at Troy University in Alabama. Why is that a suggestion, Mr. Morgan?
I suggest that because one of the collections there that I really found fascinating is they actually, and I posted a link in our chat, and I can post in the public chat as well, is the Dixie Depot records. Anybody who's familiar with Dothan, Alabama at all knows that the old railroad station, which now is a historical landmark, no longer in use, was really a prime resource for that area, not only for transactions but also for moving people. It's that same train line that a lot of blacks coming out of Alabama ended up coming into New Jersey and New York in 1956. My grandmother was one of them. I was very surprised that when they built that train line, and this is something I never thought about, they ended up buying up a lot of property in that area to build the train line. And they have contract records where they made those land transactions a lot of times with black farmers and black landowners, one of whom happened to be one of my ancestors. So that train line goes all throughout that area, and you'd be surprised if you have a family member that owns some land in that area, or that you think might have, you'd be surprised at what's documented about that land transaction and how little they got, the black landowners versus the white ones. So definitely check that out.
All right. Last call.
It might be worth mentioning the Internet Archive, internetarchive.org, because you can put your search term in and be led to so many. And I just did slavery just to see what I came up with, and it was 15,866 results. So internetarchive.org.
And something else I'll mention about that is they actually had a lot of the Freedmen's Bureau records available on Internet Archive before they were made available through Family Search. And I remember when I discovered that, I was like, ooh, let me download this whole roll because I don't want them to take this off. So, oh yes, another suggestion, St. Louis County Public Library. Last minute, throw in your suggestions. What are good things or good places for people of color to research their genealogy?
Digital Archives of the Caribbean. There's a lot of newspapers, and there's a lot of countries. If you look at the pages of who's collaborating with that project, it's tremendous. It's Haiti and countries in South America, many countries across the Caribbean. And it also links back up to Florida.
Okay. And you said this Digital Archive of
the Caribbean.
Digital Archive.
It comes out of SFU.
Southern Florida University or
Florida State.
Florida State.
Florida State is FSU. I thought I heard her say S.
I don't have the link right in front of me. I had it before, but I know I put it on the list before, but oh yeah, here it is. It's ufdcweb.one. Let me write it down if I can.
Okay, we'll get it in the chat. Someone else brought up Southeastern University in Louisiana Special Collections, Wilson Library, UNC Private Collections. We've got just a running tally of list of libraries, and it all goes back to the point that you still need them. We can't ever get away from them as much as we think we can, and that everything's going to be digitized. As long as people are still writing every day, we're never going to get rid of libraries, ever.
You know, it's interesting you say that because now with all the digital age and electronics, the internet, the libraries are now open 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
So we have some access that we can get online after hours. But other than that, you know, you're going to the library. You know, I think like Renata was talking about the noise and stuff. Some people are dropping their kids off there, you know, in between getting off work and, you know, catching the bus or whatever. But I still think it is the best place to learn, you know, by either opening the book or putting your hands on a book or seeing a video or some interaction types things that are going on. So it's just one of those that, like you said, it's not going away. And I know in the Charlottesville area, the public libraries a few years ago, when I first moved here, they were running kind of like one or two in the nation, still being active little local public libraries. And there's a slew of them. It's not just one. There's several locations throughout Central Virginia, and it's called the Jefferson Madison Regional Library System. And I want to shout out for UVA, and I don't know if Renata ever did any research in the collections that they have at UVA at Alderman, Smalls, and they've got special collections there that are absolutely fabulous. Mm-hmm. And a friend of ours that some of you know is Jean Cooper. She is the librarian at Alderman. So when you do the Ask the Librarian, I think you're talking to her if you're talking about genealogy. And she's the author of the book called Antebellum, Index of Antebellum Southern Plantations, which is an excellent book and reference to be able to search by state, by county, by name plantation owners throughout the antebellum South.
All right. If we don't have any other ones, let's see. Oh, looks like me and James posted the same thing in there. He mentioned the Iowa Masonic Library that has the largest collection of Masonic proceedings in the United States, regardless of racial background, as well as other fraternal organizations. Let's see. I see Thomas McKenty is in the house briefly.
I think Sir Leprechaun is also in the house.
Yeah, we got a lot of people in the house.
Yeah.
We have to name our in the house. You know, remember how Arsenio
It's in the house.
Well, Arsenio had the dog pound, so we got to figure out what the name of our, you know,
the library.
Is it going to be the microfilm reel?
No, it's the library. The library's open. You know, I'm tweeting for them to come get. The library was open to come join us.
Yeah, and people have been joining us.
Yes.
And it's been fruitful. We've been throwing a ton of links and names at you in the meantime or during this session. This is the best part about the reason why this is recorded is you can go back and listen to it later if you missed something that someone was mentioning. And so we've got genealogy. Jen is in the house.
Yep.
We got a lot of people in the house right now. Quite a few folks. This is good to see everybody. So moving forward, we definitely have to get to current events because a lot has transpired over this week, and I don't know why.
Houston, we have a problem. See, they're going to close the library because me and you, Nika.
Oh, no, because we're too loud. And, you know, and that's the thing. Renata's going to be the one that's going to kick us out.
I know she is. And Angela's going to back her up. I have not seen that in the libraries. But then again, it might be where I'm going. I usually go to the corner and grab what I need and go to a corner. And
I usually do that too and like move like out. But I know that if we ever do a research trip with Renata, like me and you are going to have to be like on the whole other part of the floor.
We're not going with Renata. And no, ma'am. She needs to tell us what we need to go see. Then me and you will go in, split up, wreak havoc, and come back out.
That's messed up.
But I want to give a shout out before we go to current topic. I've got to say Library of Virginia. And most libraries don't have just, you know, big ones like that, don't have just their state. They do have access to other states like Allen County Library. But the Library of Virginia, I mean, I'm 40 minutes away, 45 minutes away. That's a day trip going over, hanging out and coming back. And I just want to call out the the option that they provide online, and number one is Chancery Records. And I think they are a gold mine, and I think people need to check throughout this, on the website for the specific county or area where these Chancery Records are at the Library of Virginia.
So we got to make sure, right? We know what Chancery Records are, but there may be somebody who is watching who may not know what those are. And I've actually gone through that and I thought it was a mistake. See, one thing you have to understand about me is when I find record sets online that I think are absolutely unbelievable, I think that God dropped that in for me that night and I'm not going to be able to get back to it. And I got to search with all my
It's my great-great-grandmother telling you it's Chancery Records.
Yeah, she's over here on this shoulder maybe, but every time that happens, I just go, oh my God. Okay, I've got to get everything together because what if they take this offline? What if it's a mistake? That's what I end up thinking. And that's how I stumbled into the Library of Virginia and their Chancery Records. What are Chancery Records? These are records that include information on the sale of slaves going way back. I've seen stuff in the 1700s. It's by county. It's searchable. It's indexed. And I'm talking about pretty much every name on these documents. Yes, trust me, you're like, there's no way. I've looked through them.
But Chancery also is about equal who gets what.
Yes.
In a lawsuit. So it could be a divorce or something, and who gets what. So what is included that is names, locations, witnesses, affidavits, talking about the community. I did a talk on one, and it was a husband and a wife, and the husband traveled with building something, like working on the railroad or whatever. And every time he came home, wifey had another baby. And so the neighbors had to talk about her and telling about them in the community, that she was keeping company and wasn't doing the family thing, the motherly thing. All this is written in here, names, babies, what men were going there. These are coming from the witness. So now we're documenting a community during a time of, 1900 or whatever it was. And it was so interesting. I thought I could write a book about this. All these witnesses came up, and there was 3 babies that were born, and he filed against her, but it was about who gets equal parts of whatever, and I'm not an attorney, so somebody could clarify that better, but that's the everyday way of looking at it.
Yeah, the thing that I stumbled across was, it was maybe 1802, 1803 was the date.
Yeah.
And it had how the slaves were divided in this particular family. And it even included years of birth. And some of the people had dates of birth for the slaves.
Yeah.
And that's when I knew, I hear Dante Eubanks in the chat room saying, yes, I totally agree, thinking that it's just for you and it's going to go offline that night. I thought there is no way I'm saying this. I'm like, I can't imagine who are these people's descendants with these exact birth dates. And then you have who they were owned by and then who they were bequeathed to. Oh yeah. Just even if you think you have no tie to Virginia, I think it's safe to say almost all roads lead to Virginia at some point. Just take a glance and just kind of see what the Library of Virginia has, because it is an amazing, amazing, amazing resource. And
you can share that link with
yes,
you.
ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I know we have to move on, but I just want to say too that this is probably important for everybody to know. When you have a library card, it gives you access to do a lot of things from home.
Yes.
That that for any subscriptions that the library has, you can usually access them from home. And that for me has been the most valuable thing about my Library of Virginia membership card, because I can go on ProQuest, I can read the Journaling Guide, which was a Black newspaper here in Hampton Roads, still is. You can just go to so many sites and work right from home as if you're still in the library just by putting your card number in. So local libraries do it too, but I know that for me, the Library of Virginia, I always use that card number when I want to go to some of those sites.
Agree. That's definitely a good tip. Yeah, it's using your library card and looking at like the online resources. It's usually in that area, and then you can put your number in there to access records. Library of Congress, we totally forgot about that. Everybody in the country can get a card to the Library of Congress. But the thing that I like is they have the ProQuest Black Historical Newspapers. That's available. That subscription is available at the Library of Congress with their cards. And Genealogy Gen said, well, they will do interlibrary record copies for you for the Library of Congress. That's a great tip. Hoppy Trust.
Oh, yeah.
Being true. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so
yes,
much.
ma'am. Go Hoppy Trust. Judy Russell turned me on to Hoppy Trust. HATHI trust.org. Don't use up all your searches. If you do, you're gonna have to come back. But it seems like it's a partnership between several college level libraries that have digitized books, and they make them available online. So yes, in Hoppy, we are trusting. Absolutely. All right. So let's get to current events. Let's talk about, before I guide the conversation, let's just give you all some time to weigh in on what I wrote. The people in the chat room or those watching may not be aware. I don't even remember when I wrote it. It's got to be a week ago at this point because every day is just a blur. I wrote a blog post regarding diversity in genealogy and family history research. And yes, Ms. Shelley mentioned Houston, we have a problem, as she tweeted it. And it's gotten comments from all over the place. I would say 95% has been in support of what I've talked about in the blog post. I will definitely share the link in the chat for people to access it. But until I get my guiding questions together, I'd just like for you all to have a little banter regarding your initial reactions, whatever else, to what I wrote.
I can say something.
Okay.
To kick it off. It came from a posting from Shannon and Shannon Christmas. And there's a lot of us that do a lot of submittals to different various genealogy organizations. And we typically do not get selected, or it's very rare that we get selected. And so that's a concern that we all share. And I think Nika's article eloquently shared feelings and shared information that a lot of people probably weren't even aware of. And there's a few of us that are very connected in the genealogy world. We go to a lot of conferences, we're members of various different groups and things. So I compliment Shannon, number one, to share the information. I'm talking about Shannon Christmas, which is on Facebook, shared that he had submitted 5 proposals to present at the National Genealogical Society Conference. And, I didn't post, I submitted 4. They all 4 were rejected, his 5 were rejected. So it was time to have that dialogue to see if there's something going on. And the research that Nika had done even brought out even more. So we're thinking, oh, wow, is there some little pattern? So, to be fair to everybody, for those of us that like to teach and present, we also like to have the opportunity to do it on the national stage. Some of us do, some of us don't, but the opportunity should be available to us. So I commend Nika on the article, like what she wrote. I like the feedback we're seeing. And it was the first time I think Shannon had experienced that, where there's several of us that had been basically bumped a little bit upside the head a little bit, that, not being rejected over the last few years. And so I just want to thank Shannon and Nika for bringing this forth, because there's a lot of conversation about it, but we hadn't taken it anywhere. Yeah. So I'll let Angela go next. She's raising her hand.
Yeah, for me, because I had not submitted to speak this year at NGS, and I was a bit startled or stunned by the information that came forth, only because this information came forth for me 4 years ago, 2012. And some will remember, you will remember, Shelley, I think you were there, several of us. I remember we were at a conference, in fact, in St. Louis.
Yes.
Coming down to breakfast, someone just said, "Oh, Angela, did you submit to speak at this conference coming up?" And I said, "Yes, I did. I submitted 4 proposals, and they were all rejected." And there were these sort of looks of recognition among the others who were at the table. And then 3 people in a row, "Yes, I did too. Yes, I did too." And the third person, "Yes, so did I." All had been rejected. Well, and then someone mentioned another person, extremely well known, had submitted 7 that year, had been rejected. All of us are people of color. What became evident, because that was 2012, but that was my 3rd consecutive year in a row to submit. And for me, I said, okay, I guess I get the message. It's taken me 3 years to get the message. Clearly, that is not a venue where any proposals that I submit will be welcomed. And so I removed myself from submitting. So I had not submitted since that time. But I guess my hope was that it had changed. And so there was a surprise on my part to hear this again. You had then said, "Oh, yes, I submitted 4 or 5 or whatever." And then others began to write to several of us. And I'm sitting here 4 years later because I've put my energies into some new endeavors, and that have been very good, very healthy. But the fact that something was going on, thankfully, the response has been very, very positive, I think, from the public, in the sense that people are saying, "Hey, what is going on?" I know that there was a little bit of an effort to maintain the status quo. Hey, keep submitting, it's okay. But no, it's really not okay. And that is a concern that 4 years later, I'm hearing this is happening to colleagues whom I respect, whom I admire, from whom I learn so much, and from whom I know others can learn so much. Yet they are being denied that opportunity to speak. That for me was when I realized, oh my gosh, this is ongoing. And that message, "Oh, keep putting your hat in the ring, it'll someday be picked," made me concerned about process. And I often refer to process in a lot of things, but that really became something that did concern me. And it's one of those things that I think deserves review, fair review. And of course, I'm not on the selection committee, but I know, in fact, another person in the Midwest had said, "Oh, yes, I applied too, but I'll address this in a few days," because they were involved with some other activities. But wow, it's, there are many people. And of course, there are people, I'm sure they're going to have someone to speak who's very talented, and it does not put down anyone else who is selected. But the process, it has been suggested, well, submit, it says you can submit up to 7. Well, I thought 4 was acceptable when I was applying 4 years ago. But maybe it should be apply for the maximum. You might get 2 selected, but that's not known by many. And, it's one of those things that it deserves discussion and review. And I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. One of the things that I will say is that initially what drew me to write the blog post was talking about speaking engagements. But this is actually much larger than just speaking engagements. This is just across the board. This is the topic that even after I wrote this blog post, I realized I had written about similar issues from a different vantage point, even last year, 2 years, 3 years ago. And perhaps, folks, weren't following my blog or whatever at that particular point in time. But a lot of these issues were interconnecting with each other. And we definitely have had some folks who have kind of saw what we wrote, and they then took it upon themselves to try to provide reasons and not necessarily reasons, but ways that societies and genealogists can actually become more inclusive, to the whole effort. And we definitely need that, especially from our allies of, who are not people of color. We definitely need those words and posts and tweets and comments and stuff shared. But I'm going to refocus the conversation just a little bit. Because I want this to just talk about people of color in the world of genealogy, period. Yes, we're talking about presentations, but we're also talking about a representation in a number of different areas. And so the first question I actually have for the panel is, have people of color genealogists and historians been marginalized due to being in the shadow of Alex Haley? Now, you're probably wondering why I would ask this question. You have to understand that Roots was a huge success. It galvanized people of, not only just people of color, but it galvanized people of different races to be interested in their family history, because the task that he seemed to take up seemed impossible to conquer. And he seemed as though he was able to do that. And by the very nature of that, everyone is in a sense tried to emulate what Alex Haley has done. They want to believe that it's possible for their own families. His work has been widely criticized by a number of noted genealogists and family historians, who shall remain nameless. I won't throw them under the bus, at least not tonight, perhaps, but his work has been criticized, considered not scholarly. I could just, throw everything but the kitchen sink at it. But do you think that we as people of color, when it comes to genealogy, family history research, that we potentially are not taken as seriously when it comes to our scholasticness with regard to genealogy, our scientific nature with genealogy, our validity in terms of a whole field existing? Do you think because he was such a success that people don't take us seriously now because he's been challenged, and it doesn't appear as though rebuttal was ever issued for that?
Can I speak on that real quickly? I'm still kind of new to all the conferences and things. I can probably count on my fingers how many I've attended, and I've only spoken at one thus far myself. But I would say I think that there is part of that, what you're saying about being in the shadow of Alex Haley, but I also think that there's a perception by people who are not of African descent specifically, that our genealogy or our techniques or whatever don't apply to them. And by proxy, people who are of African descent or who are of color, when they are doing presentations, even if it has nothing to do with ethnic specific topics, the perception is, oh, black person talking must be about black people, or it's not going to apply to me, and in fact, I think that that's ridiculous. But I do think that there's a certain school of thought out there that is like that. And I've seen it even in my short time kind of attending some of these conferences and whatnot. And I think it's sad. I think it's sad, and as you and I had talked about, privately the other day, because part of African American genealogy is really is sifting through the missing pages of a bigger family story that is America. Okay, so many of us, even here on Black Pro Gen Live, have talked about ancestors who had parents who were Caucasian and slave owners and different things of that nature. And when you're in a conference setting, you might be in the room with a cousin who's published a book or did presentations on their whole family tree, but then here you come with your story, and you just demolish, or you add on to, really it should be you add on to their story, but because they have a certain package story already set, think about what people were saying about the Sally Hemings story, 40, 50 years ago. And where we're at now with that, just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the National Park Service recognized George Washington's family tree as being multiracial, but people have been saying that, and I can tell you, I'm one of them here in the Washington, D.C. area. People have been saying that for years, but now the National Park Service recognized it less than a month ago. So, I think it's part of that is that they have a myth themselves that they're holding on to that they're kind of scared also. So yeah.
Okay. Anyone else want to weigh in? Do you think that we adversely suffer from people not taking the whole field seriously? They don't weigh African American genealogy on this as the same way as maybe Dutch genealogy or some other genre, so to speak.
I like a clarification. Do you mean the field itself, or do you mean the individuals who are the practitioners?
I say the field, because if the people who are considered the experts appear to have, I don't want to call it a disdain, but they don't look very highly on the field of African American genealogy, then that's going to reverberate down.
Well, I don't know if that's there. I think that there may be those who are practitioners, those who are professionals, those who are writers, speakers, researchers who may be considered less than in terms of being capable of telling the story, because there are people who are certainly individuals who specialize and who have had much success and who have gotten accolades for having been successful. I don't think it is necessarily the field itself, although there are the apologists who want to say, oh, well, it's all made up. It's all made up. This didn't really happen. And of course, we'll hear the political pundits saying, well, they were well fed and well clothed. We hear that sort of passive aggressive banter coming from political pundits who suddenly, even in light of a new museum being opened, they're going to apologize. Well, they weren't treated that badly. So, why are you researching this? This wasn't quite the way it was. We know that Alex Haley didn't do A, B, or C. But from inside the community, from inside the genealogy community, there are individuals I know who are practitioners and who have been quite successful. I think the challenge is to perhaps at least make it clear that there are individuals of color who are engaging in the same field, going down the same road, who have skills, who have credentials, who have certainly intelligence to present the story, which is also their story, to present it well, to present it thoroughly, and to present it accurately. I think for me, from what I can see, and looking at the number of people of talent who've not been given that opportunity to share their talent, I think it's more towards individuals who are researchers of color not being taken that seriously. But I don't know, maybe someone else may have a different perspective there.
Do you think that it's because people of color, they don't feel we have the same training and skills that they have? And I say that in relationship to real estate. And we had an organization in Tallahassee that was African American Realtors, and there was 30 of us. We got the same license as anybody else, went to the same schools as anybody else, but even within the Black clients would come to the Black Realtors to show all the houses, but when it came time to write the contract, they went to a white realtor. And we spent time for years to educate that, wait a minute, we got the same license. We went to the same school. We have the same knowledge and skills, just as the other realtors. It equates the same way, I think, in the genealogy field. I research African American, and I'm being labeled as an African American researcher. I pride myself on that, but I also do Great Britain, France, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which is still all part of the family. So people that view, and I think it is a myth, because I am amongst people that are very talented and very skilled, and I think it's a myth that they also don't attend Black sessions because they think it doesn't apply to them, because it's just about Black research. Well, you know what? There's too many shades of us, too many of us, and we are all related. We are knocking those doors down day after day after day. Getting to 1870 is the biggest myth that somebody put out there, that you can't go past that. So it's happening every day. DNA came in and is telling a whole nother story that is not lying. So wake up, America, and be able to appreciate each other, because who you not attending or selecting is probably your cousin.
Come on now. Snap,
I mean,
snap, snap, snap,
Serious,
snap.
seriously,
And
that's what they're finding.
Hold on, because Jen came in the chat room.
I'm sorry.
Jen came in the chat room and just she edges are on the floor with this comment. I'm just gonna share what she said because it's really true. She says she thinks that it's bigger. How many of the major genealogy companies and white genealogists tweeted or promoted the new museum in DC?
I only saw
Why
2.
wouldn't more genealogists
3.
be excited about a new museum?
Yeah, I saw 3.
And
the
maybe
Smithsonian Museum.
And it's the new Smithsonian, so it's
Yes.
not like this is, you know,
A
private
black
library.
museum,
You
right.
know, this is on the National Mall, a block from the White House,
Yes.
right? This is something that our tax dollars are funding.
Right down
No,
to the DAR.
private money.
Yeah,
Private money.
well,
Your tax dollars didn't pay for it. And that should be emphasized for the pundits who are going to say, look what our tax dollars. This is
No, private money,
private.
Okay.
donations.
Regardless, it's for the public.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, you don't even have to pay for a ticket.
Right.
The tickets are free.
Free. Yes.
Right? So this is a service that is provided to the whole,
Yeah.
anybody can go, anybody can walk in. Now, granted, the tickets are, I mean, it's hard to get one now, but even still, I think she does raise an important point is, you know, when new record sets come out, right? New York Public Library digitizes their city directories. I don't have anybody in my family who's in New York. It doesn't matter. I'm going to share that resource.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tweet that out. I'm going to say, hey, awesome job, New York Public Library. But why is it that people of color don't get the same type of, I guess, I don't know what you would say. I don't want to even call it a shout out, but why should it even make a difference? Yeah, I just wonder. I'm definitely going to, I'm going to share a stat with everyone who's watching because it's a tad bit disturbing. And this is a number that I came up with after I posted my blog post because of the number of people that I had reach out to me. 1 in 35 proposals that were submitted for the National Genealogical Society Conference that's going to be held in Raleigh, North Carolina in 2017, 1 in 35 that were submitted by African American speakers was approved. 1. And to just make sure that I clarify how many people submitted these 35 presentations, that was between 5 people. So if you submitted presentations and you were of African American descent, based on the information I have for the folks that I know that reached out to me, you had less than a 3% chance of your presentation getting approved. And the comment is keep applying.
Yeah,
why would we?
Yeah.
When you only have a 3% chance? Why would we, if only one of us out of 5 people is being given the opportunity, and the one person that did get the opportunity, their presentation that was approved was for African American genealogy. I will tell you that the vast majority of these 35 presentations were not on African American genealogy.
That addresses then another issue right there. But yeah.
Well, and Nika, and the keep on applying, and I commented because there was a few people that I was one of them that said keep applying, and then I came back and I retracted that because I'm a big motivator. I want you to do well. I want to do well. I want everybody to do well. And I retracted that publicly on Facebook in a response to someone that said keep applying. Well, a few people did. And I used to say that all the time. Just keep applying, keep applying. I can't do that anymore because exactly of the data that I'm seeing and now learning even more of, and I'm one of them that continually gets rejected. And so, and again, skills, methodology, experience. I've done genealogy almost over 30 years. I've got significant successes with my tree and helping others with their tree. But I can't tell people to keep applying anymore. I think the message is you're not wanted.
Well,
period.
and that's the other piece that I'll add on to this is that out of those 5 speakers that submitted 35 talks, there was more than 100 years of combined experience between those people.
Now, see, that's shameful at one point. I'm sorry.
Not
that
10
hurts.
years.
That hurts.
100
that
years.
Hurts. Yeah. So again, are we valued? And I think it's even I think it's also not just people of color. I think there is a realm of the same presenters year after year after year. So I don't want to just make the public, because I know people are listening and tuning in, talking and whatever, but there's also a group of our white cousins, genie buddies, whatever, that are also not getting that chance because you got the old regime that holds some of these places and you see the same faces all the time. So newer people coming on with experience, new skills, things to share, don't get that opportunity based on those stats. And that's something I think needs to be relooked at and opened up. I'm not telling somebody how to run their business or anything like that, but give an opportunity to others because we can do it everywhere else, state and local. But, and we have just as much to share. I have just as much skills as anybody on this panel. And we'll learn from each of you and consider everybody a mentor. So I think that's a chance for people to relook at what they're submitting and where they're submitting.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I talked about in the blog post was go where you're wanted, go where you're going to grow, go where people are going to support you in what you're trying to do. There's no need to keep banging your head up against the same wall. And, one of the things that I'll also share is, some societies are going to read, what I wrote, read what Genealogy Jen wrote, a number of different ways that you could advance the diversity and inclusion in your society. And that's all good and well. But here's one thing that I want to add as a caveat to that. It's great if your society, the board of directors, whoever your leadership is, decides that they want to pursue diversity and inclusion. That's wonderful. But your organization needs to do the work. You, as an organization, don't go to a group of people of color and tell them, help us get this, bring in more people like you, do X, Y, Z. No, what that says to a person of color is that it's their responsibility to change your culture. And that's not what their job is. If your group really, truly believes in inclusion, diversity, that the genealogy is for everyone, you're going to make sure that you take the time to go through your policies, your procedures, anything that could adversely affect anyone. As simple as if you still have indexes for old censuses that say whites only on them on the shelves of your library, having enough sense to remove that because that could be seen as offensive to somebody. That shouldn't be, you shouldn't appoint a special committee for people of color and have it all be people of color and have them be the work group that does everything. No, that looks lazy and sloppy. I'm just going to give that to you for free. So
I'll pay for that.
But the point I'm making is it's about everybody. And if it's really about everyone, and if it's really about inclusion, and if it's really about diversity, you're not going to try to push it off on other people to do the work for you. You're going to do the work. I hate to make it quiet, but that's
why I'm picking up
drop.
because nobody else is saying anything. Come to the table with an open mind and don't tell me what I need to be trained on, because I have the skills coming to the table. So I want everybody to come to the table. If they're looking to make change, then I'm equal at the table.
Yeah, you are equal at the table.
Well,
yeah. and that's the thing. Jen had amazing points.
Yes.
That's what you're supposed to do. But I can see, and I've had experiences with other organizations who were trying, not even related to genealogy. Right. I've had other organizations who wanted to increase diversity, bring in a group of people of color, and then make them the work group to change.
Yes,
that's their organization. Not how it works. And that's not how it works.
No.
And that's not how it sticks, and that's not how it's lasting. You as an organization have to, that's a whole separate other process. If you bring them in for feedback and vetting and all the other, that's different. But expecting your African American research group to add more diversity to your organization, asking them in particular to do it, no, that's not it. It has to come down from the leadership. I will just add, there's a few comments in the chat, definitely reaching in and reaching out. It takes both sides. You know, the society has to reach out and the other people have to reach hands back in. But you've got to have people there to reach out to. If you don't advertise, if you don't go into spaces that people of color are in, how do you expect for them to come to you?
When, you know, a good comment that a lot of times for various conferences is that the people of color are not attending the conferences. And when I've went to certain conferences, oh yeah, I'm counting who's there, who I see, I'm counting, because it doesn't matter if I'm doing a presentation on African American genealogy or whatever, you know, because I don't always do that. I do it on methods and strategies. Yeah. And I don't always see, depending on how big the conference typically is, there's just a handful that come. And so there's more there, but if you don't see anything that's going to help you within your research, why would you go? And, you know, just like in the public education, there was a time that Black children or children of color only saw white teachers. They didn't always see people of color teachers. And I think this is a teaching moment for all of us. We got to have that diversity to teach. And not all whites can teach on people of color. Not all Blacks could teach on people of color. I think it's all of us coming together and teaching and just, you know, I'm not going to say trying to get along, as words from Rodney King. I'm just saying you got to come with the willingness to do this. And don't slap me down thinking you got to teach me something to come up to your level, because I am at your level and appreciate the opportunity to share something that you might not know that will enhance your research. And I always invite people that aren't of my color. Well, that's not a good thing to say.
Because you about as light as
but wait a minute, and don't talk about the DNA. We're not about to say you and Tony. But what I'm saying is, I would encourage people that are not Latino or African to sit into our sessions.
Yes,
because they will learn different skills and outside the box that they are traditionally taught in continually. And I know that because I've been in both of them, and that's why I come up with the so what. It's just like GPS, but let me tell you what, it's a drill, you're doing it, and things are coming out of it. Because they're not teaching but one tunnel to do things, where we're looking at various tunnels and trying to bring it all together. So
one thing I'll also add is, you know, all of us, especially those who are in the speaking arena, we all speak on a number of different topics, not just African American research. And I think that's, yeah, so what? You know, and so that's something that needs to be said. And a comment from the chat room, and this is totally apropos, is you don't go where you're not wanted.
Correct.
And if, you know, you look at conference materials and they're trying to be diverse, but their population hasn't quite caught up yet, then there has to be a concerted effort put out to recruit those people to come and to make them feel like they're wanted.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the easiest ways to make a person of color not show up is when they see your conference materials and all the presenters don't look like them.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the quickest way to make sure that they don't come.
I think also that sometimes now, when you asked about the field itself maybe not being respected, it's very interesting because I think that sometimes maybe there is a little bit of disrespect for the topic of African American genealogy, because certainly I specialize in Civil War as one of my areas of interest, and not only the United States colored troops. I do research others, and but a lot of times if I have a workshop that I may be submitting a proposal to an organization to speak on Civil War, it might be assumed that, oh, well, we already have someone else talking about U.S. colored troops, so I might not get into that pile to look at. But I think there's a certain degree of expertise that has to be recognized that many of us have. And I know that there have been events in the Midwest when people are talking about land records and homestead records. I'm sorry, if you don't know what Bernice can tell you about homesteaders and homestead records, you are missing something very, very significant. I can give a personal example. Of course, many people know that Native American is one of the areas that I research. There are probably 3 people who've studied Native American records, particularly out of Indian Territory or the Twin Territories of Oklahoma, as much as I. There are probably 2 others that have gone and immersed themselves in it, who are just as verbose when it comes to those records. Yet I know from experience, having submitted, that suddenly, okay, well, you don't have to accept me, but I know that somebody living in Western Tennessee who knows about those records is going to be selected, or I have a colleague in Northern California who knows those records. But no, they're not accepted. And here's someone else who's going to give a very sanitized version of the same topic, yet at least 3 of those individuals I can point out are published and have really gone in depth with those. Really, are they truly considered equal to? Probably not. And that's unfortunate because, again, there's that concept of, oh, well, maybe you could only talk about that. But someone less skilled and less aware of how extensive some of those records can be, they'd never be considered, again, well, keep applying. You know, and as I think Bernice or someone said here in the chat, you know, it's like telling someone to keep drinking water out of the colored water fountain. And wow, you know, it does make one think. And
yes, there's a couple comments. Jen is in here. There's not an edge left because she keeps making comments in the chat room. She says a lot of the conferences are not being promoted to people of color. If the organizers and members only have white friends, that's who they're going to share the information about with regard to the conference.
That's interesting.
But I think it is a point of recognition. You know, when I see people talking about their favorite, you know, people online, and they'll mention their favorite podcasters, I share those favorite podcasters, but I would never miss Bernice's show. But I don't see her name mentioned there. And, you know, really, okay.
Aren't you the only one that speaks at the Smithsonian on the blended families?
Yes. Yeah, I'm the only genealogist of any color.
Exactly. I mean, look at that right there.
But again, I think it's a matter of really, you know, I mean, we can have qualifications that stretch from here to the Chesapeake Bay, but, you know, is it really considered not enough? What is that perception that one is not prepared, or one is not, well, I don't know what the word is, because my concern would be, you know what, I wish others who are among those NGS speakers would be coming to OGS this week. I would love to see some of those folks would be coming to Atlanta this week.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily see them tweeted about or mentioned at all. I would like to see is some of the same people who go to Grip It and who go to IGHR to say, hey, maybe I should be going to Maggie, or maybe I should be taking a look at something else at IBGS. We're going to go to GRIP. We're going to go to IGHR.
But they're not coming to us.
Why is that?
I think someone commented part of it is fear. I think that
We're nice folks.
well, yeah,
Maybe.
but you got to think about, hold on. Think about the climate we're in our country right now.
Yeah, chaos.
Where, discourse of a racial nature is very volatile.
Yeah.
And even before that, maybe because this definitely predates, the current era that we're in right now. But I think, especially when you're talking about topics about slavery or topics like slavery,
yeah,
I think there's a perception that the blow of dealing with chattel slavery is softened when the person doesn't have the personal experience of knowing that there are branches of their family that just go and you don't know where they go. You just only have names past a certain point. There's a little bit more. As I mentioned it to James earlier, when he had a little bass in his voice when he was getting at me about being a Y chromosome, right? Yeah, see how you just kind of like, right? There's a little bit more in that when a person knows that they have that experience versus someone who is talking about a concept or a topic. And so when we're saying things like, yes, there's an inventory and the slaves were bequeathed to this person or that person, you would say that. But the color we would add in there is, and she was pregnant. She was had to be 6 months pregnant with her next child. And that next child was my ancestor who eventually was sold off from their mother and did not know who she was. And yet it's not on paper in some courthouse. That was oral history that was passed down to me. Mm-hmm. See the difference in those two stories? So some folks, I think, just can't handle that raw nature. And we're not going to come in there like reparations. No, we don't do that. But
I would give me those names.
I was going to.
I'm not asking nobody for some money, but I am asking
anything.
people to be fair.
Yeah, but
Cash rules everything around me.
Fairness. Yeah, stop it. Over here quoting Wu-Tang Clan. I'm gonna.
I think some of this though is a lot older. It has a lot of roots. I mean, you got to look at the beginnings of genealogy, and you got to look at that close relationship to eugenics around 1900, and you got to think about why. Why are we regarded as less than?
Yeah.
Why is it you don't want to talk about people who don't have resources or poor people when you're doing genealogy? Or why is it always kings or the mayor? Or so what about all these other folks? So I think there's an older weight to that hasn't been dropped yet. And I think it's starting to break up. But and I don't know that people are really looking at that right now. But they're not looking at it as intensely as they should. That history, that older genealogy of genealogy, say.
Yes, we're gonna a few last comments before we wrap up, because here we are almost 45 minutes over talking.
Well, I like what Ellen said, the genealogy of genealogy. I think that's really important. But I would also say that I think that there has to be a discussion around, like you said, the politics of family history. Okay, Tony and I have been talking a lot over the past few weeks about a gentleman that I've been trying to research for some time, and have been really having some trouble with. And as she and I were trading information about him or whatever, I said, well, hey, I gave her all this information, and then I said, hey, I have a picture of him. His last name was he was a Drayton, right? His name was Paul Drayton. He's big in my favorite organization, right? And I was trying to research him for quite some time. And Tony, you've been kind of quiet tonight, so I want you to tell them, when I sent you that picture of Paul Drayton, what did you say to me?
I said he's Drayton through and through.
Wow.
But he's black.
Yes. I mean, he looks like his reputed father. I'll say that.
Yeah, I mean, she sent me pictures of people living today that look like this black man that I had a picture of who died in like 1852.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
So,
yes.
And then we start. I'm not going to put too much out there, but we start talking about property transactions and things. And Tony was saying she didn't know why certain things happened, and then the existence of this man that she didn't know about. She said, "Wait, this might explain some things," when you talk about family historians, especially with big names like that or big plantations and stuff, I mean, stuff gets really, really, really complicated sometimes.
Mhm.
And that's the stuff that I think that's a conversation I think that America has not had, but I think that genealogy really is on the cutting edge of doing, but we haven't done it yet. And I think that we really should be having those conversations, not only because I know we do that on a micro level inside our individual families, but as a community, as a genealogy community, are we really having that kind of a conversation where
That's a
we're
very good point.
getting into that? You know,
Good point.
I don't know. We are.
I'm glad you mentioned the politics of family history and the politics of what we do. We know that many of us for some time were not necessarily welcomed into a community when what was it, back in 90 whatever, when James Walker tried to join a genealogical organization. And we know that part, but we also know that there is sometimes that urge to, okay, let's judge. Let's see if this person's going to, here's our ruler, and let's now take, interesting research, Mr. So-and-so. Let's see if if our ruler fits what we're going to measure. And, but hey, what does that exactly mean? Again, it's coming from a concept of supremacy. And it's hard for, I know, individuals to let go of that concept of supremacy. I think one of the solutions was, hey, well, maybe we can mentor these individuals who want to speak. I think 3 or 4 years ago, when there was a similar dialogue, something said, well, maybe speakers should submit videos on what they can do and we can take a look. Again, that was judging to see if they measured something that was considered superior. And no, I'm coming with credentials and my skill set is good. As I said, I learned from everyone on this panel. I know if there's anything in the Low Country, I know I'm going to call Tony and ask questions. And I know that there's certain things on Virginia or free registers, free Negro registers, that I'm going to ask certain questions of Shelley. I know I'm going to ask some things on Franklin County, North Carolina, to Renata. And I know that there's certain things even about publishing and writing that I'm going to be asking Nika. I could just go on and on and on and write down the list. And I know if it's anything to do with the Benevolent Society, James Morgan III, where are you? And the thing is that not just the fact that XYZ individuals know a few little details. It's not just the fact that they know a few details. They have a body of knowledge that would benefit everyone. The Freedmen's Bureau records, even though unfortunately it was been presented as a Black record set, in my part of the country, on the Western frontier, Arkansas, Fort Smith Field Office, a majority of the recipients of rations were white and Cherokee. And, it's a record set that reflects the entire population. Now, everybody doesn't know that. Everyone, of course, doesn't use the records. People are just beginning to discover them a bit more. But it's a record set that we can all benefit from. But until you hear it from someone who doesn't look like me is when you're going to
accept it.
But then that's coming again from the fact that the messenger, is coming from a superior platform. Really?
Well, let me guide the conversation a little bit, just so we can close on out. What do you see?
Love it. I love it.
Children's books.
Right? It's a baby bookshelf with books just shoved in there. Don't judge his shoving technique. We're working on putting them back in the right places, and so they stand upright. But there's a reason why I share this, because in 2 months my son is going to be 2 years old, and had he been born maybe 150 years ago plus, all of what you see could have gotten me killed.
Yeah.
And that's not an exaggeration, because educating him and educating myself was considered illegal. And because of that, the history that he has, some of it is only oral because there was no one who was literate to be able to write it down. So the only way that they could pass information from one person to another was to hear it, was through the verbal word.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition to us having these books, as people in the chat room are alluding to, and you're absolutely right, having the possession of the book, being caught knowing how to read, being caught teaching other people how to read, this was a death sentence, literally sitting in my house. And I bring this up for a very important reason. And songs, absolutely. Singing songs, I mean, there's a number of things. Granted, you know, my family's from Louisiana, so we had the benefit of Congo Square in the New Orleans area where they actually allowed you to go out and sing and drum in those areas, but that was unique. I digress, but the reason why I bring this up is, and this is just a quote that I'm going to share, and I'm not indicting anybody, but I'm sharing this just for context as to why I show this bookshelf in ways that I think that indirectly, we as people of color have been somewhat marginalized when it comes to how we share and tell our stories. Yet Haley's chains were self-made. He had bound himself to the burden of proving an oral tradition, every holy word of it. His crusade was destined for failure.
Whoa. Can you show that again?
Sure. Haley in this reference is Alex Haley.
Self-made?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it. 1984. Interesting.
Oh,
That hurts.
The reason why I bring this up is because in addition to that Washington Post article, if you haven't read it, go back to the blog post that I made regarding James Dent Walker and him being marginalized from membership in the National Genealogical Society in 1960. And you fast forward 24 years later, and a statement like this is made in their quarterly journal. In some ways, all we have is our oral history. That's it. And if someone who appears to be an expert comes through and says that that's not important, or that we're destined for failure, to pay attention to it, or to use it as a guideline, or as a guiding principle, or as that lighthouse in the dark, what does that tell? What does that tell us now?
Same thing we just talked about the last 30 minutes. Not being wanted, not being equal, the myths and things like that. And that's unfortunate, and very unfortunate. And but I hate to sit here at 64 years old and say I'm not surprised. That's what I hate even more, to say that's a common, that's pretty much common overall, and I'm still seeing it and hearing it and witnessing that at my age, you know. And some things, and again, I hate saying this, some things won't change because they're so deep rooted, especially in this country. So, and I'm sorry to see that. So, and I did read your article.
Well, I throw that out there, not as an indictment, but just really as a,
That's
really just to remind people of the foundation that our societies and our organizations are sitting on, and the fact that it's going to take some real work to undo some of the things that were done. And it may have not been done out of malice. I don't think anybody intentionally did certain things or said certain things. But when it's out there, and here I was 4 years old when this was written, and now I'm 37 and I can pull that up and still read it. What does that say to somebody who's like me that's doing research? So I'm just putting that out there, food for thought. I placed the links inside the chat room if you're curious as to where I got these things, because they're publicly available. I didn't have to search very far for them. But I just want to leave us on that note, because I really want us to consider that this is not just a new phenomenon. This is not just about NGS for 2017. This is not just about speakers. This is not just about the topics they present. This is about genealogy as a whole, and its lack of diversity and its lack of inclusion. And the fact that the foundation is that. All the rest of these things are symptomatic.
Mhm.
They're leaves on the tree of a much larger tree. We got to get to the branches and the root of the issue. So it's hard to smile after that, but you know what? I always know there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And the fact that we're even having a conversation about it and that it's not hidden on a website is powerful. And that's what I have to take with that. So with that said, let me share my screen once again, because guess what? We've got one more of these to do before the year is out. I don't hear the Virginia and Maryland people excited about it.
I made a comment about bookcase. I'm gonna have to send you some stuff, Nika. I know you saw my little post in the chat room. I'm gonna have to liven that little bookcase up a little bit.
Oh, thank you. Well, you know, Channy loves books. That's one of his favorite things. So
Books of color.
Yes, we do. In fact, his favorite book right now is, hold on, let me get through the show. Okay, so Tuesday, November 1st, we're going to be talking about DC, Maryland, Virginia genealogy. Same time, same bad channel, same people. I know you can't get rid of us ever. Chandler's favorite book right now is A is for Activists. That's his favorite book. We have to read that 15 times a day.
Love it.
And
he's a descendant of freedom riders. He has to be. He has been in his blood.
In fact, one of the freedom riders bought that for him.
Love it.
So, anywho, on behalf of everyone that was here, thank you all so much for staying with us for 2 hours. The chat room has been cracking. Thank you so much, Genealogy Jen, Bernice Bennett, Dante Eubanks, Wiyusi Baraka. We've got Thomas McKenty, a number of folks that were just joining us, commenting, staying with us the whole time, especially in this last hour. We really, discussed, genealogy and diversity and inclusion. If you have any feedback for us in terms of what we, things that you think that we maybe haven't paid attention to or should look at, feel free to tweet us at BlackProGen. There's a suggestion to go see Birth of a Nation. I 110% agree. I will also throw in See 13th by Ava DuVernay on Netflix. Do not miss that. It's an excellent piece. And as for that, Queen of Ketwa, absolutely, with the Ketway, sorry, with Lupita, and her beautiful, she's just amazing. I love her. A lot of movies to go see. So until November 1st. We love you. We thank you for joining us.
And thank you, Bernice, for really your professionalism and bringing this to an arena where we could talk comfortably and freely. And you've handled it so well. Thank you.
I got another top 10.
Maybe now she's Bernice Sewell Smith.
Looking for Bernice Watton Raji, and now it's Bernice Nika. I love it. I got another top 10.
Oh my gosh. On behalf of all of us, we love you. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a good evening, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Peace. Love. What did the man say? Peace.